Good morning, Year 3, and welcome to Friday's lesson. So today we're going to continue looking at things we've missed about school, but we'll learn to contrast ideas. So that means two ideas that are very different and comparing them to one another. So there's wishes. The lists about things you have missed are like wishes. In this writing idea, you can contrast things that you really want to do with things that sound fancy, but actually you can do without. So what I mean by that is things that you really want to do, the things that you're wishing to do, and you're going to compare those to really fancy things that you can actually do without. So for example, I might say I have missed seeing my family, and something fancy might be like I don't have to travel to the Caribbean, but I wouldn't mind a trip to Weston-super-Mare. So obviously, Weston-super-Mare is a nice beach in the UK, but the Caribbean is a really fancy, posh place where you can go on a luxurious beach. So you're saying, I don't have to travel to the Caribbean, but I wouldn't mind a trip to Weston-super-Mare. So you're comparing two things. They're both to do with beaches, but one's fancy and one's not. So you'd say, I'd really like to go to Weston-super-Mare. Here's another one. I don't have to travel in a limousine, but I wouldn't mind a bike ride down the shops. So you're saying you really want to go on a bike ride now. And obviously a limousine is a really fancy way to travel, isn't it? So you're comparing the two. So you're basically saying that all the things you took for granted, like the basic things like riding your bike or going to a beach in the UK, you're starting to appreciate now. You're not bothered about having fancy things like a limousine or going to the Caribbean. You just want to be able to do the things that you could always do, like riding your bike. Just make a list of a few simple things that you'd like to do but haven't been able to, and then add some contrast. So basically, you couldn't say a simple thing like riding your bike is a simple thing. You couldn't contrast that with going to the Caribbean because they're not the same. Riding your bike and going to the beach are not the same things, whereas riding your bike and going in a limousine are both ways to travel. Going to Weston-super-Mare Beach and going to a beach on the Caribbean are both beaches. They have to be similar things. So I'll read a couple of examples out first so you get it, and then you can have a go at it. Okay. I don't need to be on the Caribbean island with turquoise sea, but I'm going to underline that because this is where the contrast is, the opposite. I do wish that I was walking along the canal path in Stroud, where a kingfisher, which is a bird, zips by in a sudden electric blue fizz, a fistful of feathered energy. So you're comparing going to the Caribbean with the turquoise sea to walking down the canal. Now, one thing is something that you might have done all the time, like walking down the canal, and you're saying you do wish to do that. You're not bothered about going to the Caribbean anymore. Next one. I don't need to be at the top of Everest, that's a big mountain, planting the Union Jack, but I do wish I could climb Strawberry Banks, where the speckled woods, small blues, orange tips, and brimstone butterflies flutter like frail candle flames. Now, there's a lot of description here, so I just want to point out the key things. This is a key thing. I don't need. What don't you need that's fancy? To be at the top of Everest, which is a mountain. But that's your opposite. I do wish I could climb Strawberry Banks, which is obviously a hill where that person lives. Now, all the rest of this stuff is just adding description. So they're saying they basically want to be able to go and climb Strawberry Banks, and they're saying they don't need to climb Everest. So they're comparing climbing Strawberry Banks, which is something simple around the corner from where they live, to climbing a really famous mountain, which is is Everest. So saying, I don't need to be at the top of Everest, but I do wish I could climb Shorey Banks. All the rest of it is just description to add detail to it. So we'll look at the next one. Again, it's starting with the fancy thing. I don't need to sit in the Ritz. The Ritz is a posh restaurant, eating lobster thermidor, but I do wish I could drop in at Fat Tony's, which is a restaurant, for a slice of fresh pepperoni pizza with gooey cheese, tomatoes, and basil with a can of cold lemonade. Now, the key things you need to look at here is, I don't need to sit in the Ritz, but I do wish I could drop into Fat Tony's. All the rest is just description. So here, going to the Ritz to eat is a fancy thing. They're saying they don't need that, but they would like to be able to drop into their local pizza place. Next one. Again, I don't need to go to a trip to Bristol Zoo. So that's the fancy thing. That's the expensive thing, going to the zoo. Let's find it. But I do wish I could visit my aged aunt to chatter with her dogs. So in both scenarios, there's animals involved, isn't there, at the zoo, and there's dogs at this person's auntie's house. So they're saying they don't need to go all the way to the zoo, but they do wish they could go to their auntie's house to visit the dogs, because going to their auntie's house to visit the dogs is something quite simple that they've missed. But they're saying they don't need to go to the zoo. So it's comparing something fancy to something simple. I'll read the rest of it because they put description in it. I don't need to go for a trip to Bristol Zoo to check out the penguins, listen to the howler monkeys, or watch the grumpy camels or elegant giraffes stretch their spotted necks. But I do wish I could go to visit my aged aunt to chatter with the dogs, whose greetings is always full of energy, the air alive with yapping and barking. We'll look at the next one. Again, I don't need to win the lottery or rob a bank, but I do wish I could catch the village bus into town and mooch around the bookshops. So what they're saying is they don't need lots of money, but they do wish that they could just go and look around the shops at things they want to buy. Now, the reason these two things are connected is because if you have a lot of money, then you can buy a lot of things. But they're saying they don't need all this money, but they do wish they could just go and look at things to buy. Now, you could have done this one by saying, I don't need a fancy new watch and a new pair of jeans, but I do wish I could go into the town and just look at the clothes in the clothes shop. So I'll read that again. I don't need to win the lottery or rob a bank, but I do wish I could catch the village bus into town and mooch about the bookshops, checking new tiles, and then wandering over to the moonshines for a snack. And another one. I don't need to own the crown jewels, drive a Lamborghini, or get into the Guinness World Book of Records. So again, these are really fancy things. But I wouldn't mind being able to buy a Winston's ice cream from the van up on Minchampton Common, watch the kites being flown and the hang gliders drift with the wind. So again, they're saying they don't need all this fancy stuff like the crown jewels and a fancy car, but they do wish they could go and get an ice cream and watch the kites being flown. And then lastly, yes, I don't need much, but I'm storing up all the good ordinary things that once were every day, but now have become my special things. This is basically about, in life, usually we always want more money, a nicer car, a newer watch, fancy holidays. But now none of that matters anymore, because we've been in lockdown for so long. It's made everyone appreciate the things we've been taking for granted, like our friends, like going to the park, like looking around the shops. So what I want you to do today is think of some simple things that you've missed doing, and then think about what fancy things would be the same. So like I was saying to you about going to Weston-super-Mare Beach or Blackpool Beach, those are simple things that we haven't been able to do. And you can compare that with going on holiday to the Caribbean. So you're saying that you don't need to do the fancy thing, but you would like to be able to do the simple thing. If you get confused, I've put this up on Purple Mash. So just remember to say, I don't need, and then whatever the fancy thing is, but I do wish, and then whatever the simple thing is. You can add some description about each thing as well. Right. This is a child's version of it, so a child wrote this. I don't want to go to a faraway island, but I do wish I could go camping with my family. So going to a faraway island would be very exotic and fancy. So they're saying they don't want that, but I do wish I could go camping with my family, which is quite a simple thing to want to do because you haven't been able to do it. Again, I don't want to climb Mount Everest, but I do wish I could go up Beacon Hill and look for fish in the pond and climb up a tree. So they're saying they don't want the fancy thing, climbing this really famous mountain, but they do wish they could climb up the local Beacon Hill and look for fish in the pond and climb a tree. Another one, I don't want to eat at a fancy restaurant, but I do wish I could get an ice cream with a friend. So again, they're saying they don't want the expensive fancy thing by eating in a restaurant, but they would like to be able to eat an ice cream with a friend. These are two similar things. They're both talking about food. These are similar because they're both talking about climbing up a hill. These are two things because they're both talking about going on holiday. One is fancy, one is simple. Another one, I don't want to see lions roaring, monkeys up trees, and giraffes munching leaves, but I do wish I could stroke my friend's dog Bailey. Again, comparing seeing animals. One is a really fancy thing, an expensive thing, going to the zoo. One is just going around to their friend's house to see their dog. And the last one, I don't want to buy the contents of the shopping centre, which just means everything in the shops, but I do wish to wander around the bookshop. They're comparing shopping. They're saying they're not bothered about going and buying everything in the shops. They just want to be able to look around a bookshop. So, writing tip for you here. Write about real things that matter to you and things that you're really looking forward to experience again. These can be quite small things that in the past we didn't think much about. Now there may be things that you are longing to do. So you might say, I don't want a fancy birthday party, but I would like to see my nan on my birthday. So you're comparing having lots of people at your birthday party to just being able to celebrate with your nan. Okay, have a go at this. Structure it the way I've set it out. It will be on Purple Mash. If you're stuck, message us on the blog, and have a lovely weekend, guys. Enjoy the sunshine. Bye.